Hello and welcome to another episode of building a 2D multiplayer Flutter game. As you know, in the last episode, we were running into a few problems with trying to get our player basically rendered from the arena. We were trying to debug that problem and realized that with the macOS implementation, debugging didn't quite work in Flutter. I then spent a little bit of time trying to figure out how to run this on a phone, which I ended up successfully doing and connecting the phone to the gRPC server running on my machine. However, like that process was a little bit kind of trial and error and probably not so fun to watch. So I'm not releasing that as an episode. Instead, what we'll do, we'll look at the changes that I applied, and we'll talk about them and then check them in and make the start of this episode after this check-in. So let's just look at the changes. They're still there. A few things we had to do is we had to go through the manifest, and basically also in the Android manifest had to say that we want to allow a connection to the internet. So we did that. And then in the arena, there was actually an error there, a bug where we basically did not assign the packed initial players to the arena when we were packing. So basically, we never sent the actual players to the client, which was obviously a problem. In the client, we did a few changes here. This is a client that basically talks to the server, right? And basically what we had to do, we had to allow passing us a level name. So we did that. We made it to where the level name gets passed in here. So we can, from the main method of our Flutter application, just pass in the level name. And the other thing we had to do is actually remove the localhost here, because obviously from the phone trying to connect to my machine, we can't use localhost because it's actually on a different host. So we basically supported adding a server URL here. Probably want to remove this. Can do that right away. So basically assigning the server host, and then when we create the channel, we actually use the server host. So that means that we can now basically specify that and make that work that way. Another change in the Timemap, we decided we don't need a player number. We don't have to know which player is which. We just have to assign slots, and then the Timemap can tell us how many players are needed to basically consider an arena full, for instance. And that works like that. And then basically what we changed here is at that point my IP was this. I'm going to look if I got the same IP assigned still. And so basically we were looking like if I'm running on Android, which is at this point on my phone, obviously this will have to change in the future, but if I'm running on my phone, then basically use this IP address. Otherwise we can use localhost. So we're going to check that in. Fixing multiple bugs. Okay, so you can push that. We can check that in. So let's just say there are still some warnings. So that's something that we did not change anything about this, so I'll leave it like this. So we'll leave those warnings, and I don't even know where this is. This is all in this file that we edited. However, this was something that we did not change, so we'll just leave it as is. So let me commit this. I would like the commit button to show up. Okay. So let me commit this. Regardless of all the... Okay, it seems like we did not... we did not commit all the files we wanted. Let's just do it on the command line and amend the commit we already did now. Sometimes I still am not good using the IDE. So now we should have this one check-in, and now we can basically say at this point now our episode starts. So we tag this episode. This one is going to be episode 33. Start. And now you can understand why I'm sometimes why I'm doing the end and the start episodes. Most of the time they are going to be the tags. Most of the time they are the same, like here. But in this case, for instance, we ended the 30-second episode here. But then I did a bunch of other changes in between, which are too boring to watch, or as I said, too trial and error. And we'll just do it like this. Okay, so we did our house cleaning. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and fix a few things. So right now, just to show it, even on Mac OS, we are now getting, if we run a server, we are now getting our player, but we only get one, and we should actually show 2 players. And what I'm going to do is to make this easier. Well, right now we're getting 1 player, but to make this easier, I'm going to place 2 players next to each other, so we can easily see if our code works. So basically, when we connect, so for now we purposely used 1 player, so we don't have to connect 2 to get the game started, right? So we get our player here. Oh, it seems like actually, yeah, that could be that one. So let's just so normally the game wouldn't start yet. So let's try this again. So if we restart the server, right, we have to restart the server to get our new changes applied, right? So let's make this a little smaller here. And now we're going to rerun our client. And so now actually the server shouldn't connect the like basically the game couldn't start yet, right? So we're going to look through the server code and look at what happens if we don't have enough players yet. We're going to actually have to walk through the code and see that. So right now we're getting let's see. So what's happening is we somehow sent but we have 2 players, so we're gonna debug through this. It looks like, okay, so what we're actually going to do is, since we can't debug on OS X, like we found out, I'm going to connect my phone here, and we're going to run it there. And so we can see what I'm actually doing. I'm going to also run a screener, source copy. I don't even know how you pronounce it, but it's basically this cool little thing that that allows us to show our phone here on this computer, so we can all see what's going on. So let me move this here. It doesn't have to be that big. Be fairly small. It doesn't have to take up that much space. So we'll put that here. And then we can basically, now we're running the debugger there, so we can actually we can watch the server a little bit. See that that's still doing what it's supposed to do. Put our game here, and now we should be good. So it's launching. We're in debug server. So now actually when the error occurs, we should actually hit a breakpoint. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. Await updates client play. So a gRPC error happened, right? So somehow, illegal to set field ID 1 of package pair to value null, not type int. So we have basically what's happening is when we requested play, it created, it pegged as a player, but basically what happened is it's not complete. So we have to actually look at what's going on. So let's look at our, let's stop this for a while. I mean, actually, I think we're best just walking through our code and figuring out what we actually are doing and what we're still missing. Because we kind of did this very quickly last time. So let's split our window here and go over here and open the Proto. Okay, so we have a packed player which is defined here, and it has an ID, and it's trying to basically get that ID, but that packed player is most likely not correctly set, or it doesn't have an ID yet. Okay, so that's the problem. So basically, what's happening is I think is that when we create the arena, so if you go to our arena, right? When we create the arena, we basically get our initial players, right? But the initial players don't have their ID set yet. So that means we cannot send the arena yet to the client. So actually, that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that the arena is actually complete, right? So we have this actually, it's full, right? So if the ID is null, right, then we don't consider it full. So basically we need to prevent the server from sending anything to the client until the arena is full. I think that would be the way to go. And the client would just have to wait, which is a little odd for other players to join. I mean, it's almost like we want to send another message to say, hey, you're getting your arena later. Or maybe we don't send anything yet and we'll send... Yeah, but you want to send the arena only once, right? That was the whole idea, to only send the walls and floor tiles and so on only once. So maybe we cannot send. Maybe we can't have an ID here. Maybe the player doesn't have to know who he is yet, right? He or she. We can send the arena, and so we can render the players, right? And we're still waiting for people to join, maybe even, right? And then, all right, that would probably work. The other option is to set the ID to something where it's not null, but it indicates that that's not a valid client ID. But what we'll do is we'll send an arena, and we have the initial players, but the initial players will not have an ID. So let's go move that ID. So then the packed initial player will also not have an ID. Obviously, we need to remove that from here, packed initial player. So for now, actually, it only has a packed top position. So at least we'll know where the players should be rendered. So let's get rid of all that ID stuff. So that should work. So now we basically are not sending anything. But the thing is, now we have to keep track of like how many players have we set. So the only... Well, actually, you know what we could do is this. We could actually have an... I don't know. Yeah, this is a bit confusing because we want to maybe already give it client IDs. We want this to fill up slowly, but we want to keep sending the arena without any problems. So what we could do though is we could keep track of registered players. So maybe the arena doesn't know. What we can do is we can say the arena is full, and we can say int registered players. And so then what we'll do, we'll look at if the player's length is the same as the registered players, right? Right. So now when we ask is full, so the register client wouldn't happen here anymore. So All right. So let's work with this. So basically, so we get a game. Where did we get the arena? So we get, okay. Don't register. So the thing is, if we get a new arena every time, that won't work, right? So we need to have a map of arenas. And we could attach them to the game. Let's see if this actually does that much harm. Actually, I'm going to add them here. It doesn't make too much sense to have it separately. So we have this game. This is basically just a server game. You can see that this part actually is still in here in the game update service. We're going to move that out eventually. So we have an arena. So when we create a game, we actually will already pass an arena. And I'm going to say that the clients is not required, but the arena is. So let's just make it a required property. And you realize that we're purposely not making the we have a game state and we have an arena, and so we're not right. So let's see, we need these types, but we could also, yeah, let's just make this also actually the and it has to be so what are we actually doing with the game state? Okay, so we use it for the loop. Okay, so we create our loop with the game state. The arena is only basically needed initially to get things nicely to basically know when the game started. So now we can say try start, right? And now we can say game loop try start arena. But the thing is that the game loop now doesn't really know anymore. Actually, the game knows if we can start it or not, because it knows how many clients there are, and it knows to ask the arena, right, if it can start it or not. Right. So basically, we'll return a bool here. And we're going to say that if basically the arena isn't full yet, if we don't have enough clients, if not arena dot full for the number of clients we have, then we return false because we couldn't start the game. Otherwise, we start and return true. The thing is like this one. So yeah, this returns true, but really we know that we can start it or not. So we're going to make an assertion here. To basically catch right away if we're doing something that we shouldn't. If started, right? Don't have to do this anymore. So check, and then that's it. Okay. Now we can just call start. We don't have to pass the arena because we have the arena. Does it want the arena? I don't think it needs the arena anymore. Because we just use that to figure out if we are we can start on, and then we return true here. Okay, so now if the arena is full with clients, and now we just need another. We have an add client already, so we added the plain client, right? And then basically what we need to do actually, we need to get the client. We need to assign player mode. Okay, so get tile position. What are we doing here? Okay, so right now this is the key here. So when you're getting the tile position, we actually need to take into account what our arena is, right? Because the arena can give us a next player. So next player position, let's say that. So basically what that means is, or let's just say we give it a player position, we give it an index. So then we know the initial players. Can I do that? Oh, we need probably. Oh, we need the position, right? The top position. Okay, cool. So make that an expression. All right. So we got that. Now we can get the. We can, instead of get top position here, we can just say top position is basically the arena get player position, and then we give it the right. So the length is always one higher than the index that we can index into. So what we also would probably make sure is, well, we could assert here that it's not larger than players that we have, but we're already making sure. We can do also can make sure that the arena is not full yet. Right. So basically now we're basically making sure that that we're not running out of clients here, or basically of players. And so when we add the client, we should now be able to ask if the game is full, right? And so we just say bool full, make it a getter, and that basically is this, right? And so now also we can here say this is full, and the same here. Okay, so now we can say it's a game full, and then we try start it. And obviously we could also just go ahead and try start it. That would work too. So now we got an our game update service that figured out. Let's see what is complaining about here now. So we create a new game, and we need to create an arena. And we did create an arena before. We just need to move the code where we do so. So arena from Timemap is what we were using. Arena for levels, for level, okay. So doing that here. So right now we only support the one level. Obviously the client could want to play different levels. But basically what we can say, we pass the arena here. So that's how we're going to do it. I mean, we're taking a lot of shortcuts, right? In reality, what we need to do is, to actually support arenas for different levels and so on. But this works for now. So let's see what else other problems we have here. So I think game state we moved also into a named parameter. All right, so let's see what else. At the client, and then we try to start it. Obviously, if it's full, right, we need to create a new game. So here we're basically saying if games is empty, then create a new one. or if the current game is full. But we're not. I mean, we could say or the current game games of the current game ID is full, right? Then we create a new game. All right, so that should actually work. And again, we're moving here kind of really fast, and we just need to kind of make sure we don't make mistakes. But right now we're trying to just do the simple as possible. So we're creating. So create model. Where do we call this? Call this from the client. So actually, that's a good point. So that means that we need the client ID. Right, so what we can do is we can make that part of here. We get, why do we have to create the mod? We can, oh, we have the client ID. We have that? No. What is a client? Gives us a client back. But that should have a client ID, right? Because we request to play. And we have a playing client here, right? And I think that playing client has an ID. Obviously, we can't see it here very well, but if you go to our Proto, I said, if you go here, playing client has a client ID, right? So we can basically say, this is our playing client. Are we exploding this in any way? No, we are not. But we can. So what we'll do, make another getter here. Get client ID, and that's going to be the playing client dot client ID. So that way we can get our client ID. So that's, and we only need that because we need to figure out from all these players that we're going to run into, we're going to need to know who we are. So again, go back here. So we can say client dot client ID. And now in this create model method, take that as the second parameter. And now we are good here. So the main difference is that we can create an arena, and we don't assign the players an ID yet, but we know the IDs, right? And then once the arena is full, we'll figure out how to assign these. We're going to figure out how to assign these IDs. We're going to figure out like basically who's who, right? But basically it's mostly just by the index the player. So the order that the players basically sign up, then they're going to get an initial player, and they create a model from that basically, right? And once they have that model, they know who they are. Obviously on the server, we have to make sure that we also know who is who. But we'll figure that out in a second. So right now we are no longer having problems with compiling. So I'm just going to start the server, and I'm actually going to start a Mac app. And actually we should not have any problems anymore. So I'm going to start the Mac app, and then maybe I'll start the phone app as well. So we'll see. See what happens here. So ideally, we should basically get an, okay, we have a player. That's interesting. So this player is now here, and then if we launch it on the phone, we should actually get a different. We should get a second player. No, we did not want to launch on macOS. Okay, so we already did start the game loop. Why is that happening here though? I mean, it's happening. It should be happening inside the server. I'm a little confused why we're getting this error here, but maybe that's what a gRPC does. It sends it to us as a client, maybe. Let's see. I mean, if we get the same problem now here. So I'm launching this on the phone now. So let's look through the code while this is running. Let's see. So when we try start, right? If it's not full, we're returning false. We're not even starting the game loop. So we should not start the game loop twice. Okay, so we have kind of an interesting deal here going on. We got the same player only. So we need to figure out why we don't have more players. Right? And what's also really odd is usually that resizes, but it seems like we disabled that somehow. Or maybe because we had an error. Who knows? But it's getting a little bit tricky now, right? Because we're running stuff on the server. Actually, what you normally would do under normal circumstances, you would probably write tests for this and make sure everything works as expected. But basically, let's look at this a little bit. So when we create an arena from a timemap, we're looking through all the initial players. Basically, from wherever we found a player, we add an initial player, right? And we add that wherever it happened to be. Okay, that's fine. We should have different players. Then basically, what we do then is we have a thing like if you give me a number of registered players, I can tell you if it's full, right? So maybe I do this just for safety. You should never hit this, but that's fine. Then, I mean, we should never have so it could be this, but I mean, we should never have more registered players than players. So let's just not allow that even. And then basically we say, give me the player position of a certain player, right? And let's see like where we call that. And basically what we're doing is like how many, when we do that in the game update, so when we create a game, actually let me move this to a different file. So we have it separate. And basically the game. Let's create the file here. All right, now we have that separate. And I have to import some things. Actually, the thing is we're going to move the game loop here as well. Game state. Oh, so this is for the required. But the game state is in message types. Okay, I can leave it there for now. Game loop is here now. All right, what I want to do is I want to show importing from here. Okay. So let's go through some errors here. The game is now here. And now we're getting confused, right? So let's call that actually, once we're done with our, okay, now it works again. So let's name this to server game. To have them separate, and then also rename this guy. Even though it's already in a separate file, but in a separate folder, but that's fine. So what we can do next is basically look at what's happening here. So we are adding a client, right? We are making sure it's not full yet. And then we add that client. So before, let's just say it's the first client. So At that point, the client's length is 1, and then -1, we get the first player here, right? Okay. So then, but this is the player model, right? What we need to do is actually in the arena, yeah, we're only looking at the arena right now. The initial players should actually, yeah, the initial players should already have the position correct, regardless of. Okay, but the thing is, maybe we don't render the right one. I mean, I think maybe that's what's happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to kill everything, and we're going to restart the server. And I think what we need to do is on the Nexus, because that's the only one where we can actually debug. We're going to debug what we're getting as a result for play. I think we are getting 2 players when we're asking the server to play. But what I'm going to do is first of all put a breakpoint inside the client. So here basically, and let me just close this side so we get a little more space. Basically here, when we make the play request, right, we want to look at what's in the arena. I want to look at what's in the arena and how we then use that. Let's put a breakpoint here, and let's launch the app. As you can see, like we added a lot of code, and we kind of did it very quickly, and now we're paying the price a little bit because it gets a little harder to understand what's going on, and when something goes wrong, like what's wrong. So let's just look at the arena here. So we got the arena, and so we have floor tiles, and we got 2 players, right? So that's what I thought. So we have 2 players, and they are in different positions. Let me just verify that, right? So they are in the same row, but they are in a different column. So that's perfect. So the question is though that whoever called this. So let's remove that. We are sure about this now. So request to play, and this was called from here. All right, so this is called from here. So we get our client, and then we create a game model. Okay, yeah, that's the problem. So we create our model, but we only add our player. Hold on, but that's not true. Oh, so we give them both the same client ID. That can't be. We don't know who we are yet. That's the problem, right? But I mean, the thing is that, yeah. What we actually would need is we need to know so you create 2 players, but they both have the same same ID, and so what happens if we overwrite them? Do you see that? What's happening here? So basically we use the same client ID and we assign to the same value in the map. And in the end we have one left, and that's why it's the last one that we're seeing, because that's the last one we're assigning. So there's an inherent problem. So actually what we need to do, so I understand the problem now. We can stop everything again. And let's look at the proto definition again. And let's think this a little bit through. So when we get the initial player, we have multiple of those. But we don't know we don't know who is who because they don't all have client IDs yet. However, what if we, as part of this, we get our client ID, but we get basically a repeated list of registered clients. Doesn't make sense at all. I mean, do we care? So the problem is that we're already trying to render something that's incomplete, right? We're getting an arena. We know where all the clients have to be, but it's not complete yet. Right? Because we actually have to sit there and wait a little bit. What we could do though, we could give it our index. So we would at least know who we are. But in a way, this is all not cool. What I want to actually do is I want to go back to the server. So we get this arena back. And the server decides when we can start the game loop, right? So what I want to do actually instead is whenever we are asking to play on the client, instead of starting the game immediately, we can go into some sort of mode where it says we're waiting to play, right? It's not complete yet. We're waiting for other players to join, right? And until we hear basically from the server with the first event, which is the first game model that then is complete, right? And in the end, then we don't need all these. We don't need all these players yet. We don't need to send this at all. We don't create a model yet. We'd create a model, but we wouldn't put the players yet. Right? So we could create a model, but the arena wouldn't even have this. We wouldn't send this. So I wanted to keep the arena clean of stuff that doesn't belong, that we won't send, but I'm not sure we will be able to. Because we're passing the timemap here. And the timemap, yeah, so we're basically building this. But it can basically just be tab positions now. So we're gonna go a little bit crazy here. We're going to say that we're going to go into our Proto and we're no longer sending this thing at all. We're not sending these players. We're done with that. That didn't work well. So basically, I'm going to regenerate this. Okay. So now what we'll do, instead of, so the player position is the players index. Not sure why it's confused. I'm not entirely sure why it's... So the initial player, do we even need this guy? I don't think we do. There's no initial player. Let's get rid of it. Oh, and the problem is that it needs to be a list, right? The player still needs to be a list, but of tab position. I mean, this is actually, we could send this. It's actually not so bad. We can send this actually even. because then maybe like we can maybe show even the game already if we wanted to, with basically, let's say the player spots, right, or player position. So basically that would allow us to, put a dot somewhere. But yeah, for now we'll send it just to be complete. No, here players. So now it's basically all about positions. Now when we pack this, I mean, this all works out because those are tiles now. So when we pack this, let's see. The players are what? Our top positions. So we map them, we pack all the top positions. Those are packed initial players. Let's call them packed player positions. All right. And then we unpack. We just have to say tile position. Let's call them player positions. But I mean, I'm realizing that really only the server would need to know for sure where these players need to be, because when it then starts the game, it needs to place them. So okay, it seems like it didn't update yet, maybe. Yeah, there's no packed initial player anymore. Let's go back to our Proto. What? Maybe. I'm confused. Proto messages. Okay, there you go. There shouldn't be a packed initial player anymore. So let's just get rid of this guy altogether. Are we still using it anywhere? No, we aren't. So sometimes it seems like the IDE is a little behind. There is no packed initial player anymore. It doesn't exist. The packed player positions. It's the top position now. Maybe I'll just close the file. Maybe I'll just close the project and reopen it. I think it's behind. What is this anyways? Okay, so now we got out of the entire IDE. So now let's look at that. We are going in the right direction here. It's just basically we kind of architected it a little bit wrong, so to speak, and now we're realizing that this is causing a bunch of problems. So and we're just fixing them. So basically we can't. Okay, now it seemed to be fine. Maybe. Yeah, the way we had it didn't work. We kind of fixed it, and now we're just fixing stuff. Packed arena players. Maybe it's called player positions. So basically our rename. Yeah, our rename didn't really get applied. I guess because it was so confused. So the refactoring tooling didn't really work. What's wrong now? Here it's called players. Oh, it's in the packed arena. Okay, so that's better. We got those figured out. Let's see if there's more in this file. Nothing. Initial player. So it's just, this is actually already the top position, right? So then we can just remove this. Okay, now we only got warnings, which are because we're not using everything. And then we got this generated warning again, but I'm just going to ignore this for now. Now let's look back at the server. So the server basically, it says, okay, kind of already supporting that with multiple active games, right? And so basically, we create a playing client. We return the client, and at the same time, we try to start the game loop. When the game loop actually finally starts, right, it will start emitting. It will start emitting game states, and so those game states will basically then cause the clients to update, right? So once we have game states emitted, then we're fine. So we just need to make sure we add a player here. And so we add a client. We figure out where the player would be, and we add a player to our game loop. So that's perfect. So we got the game loop ready. So when the game loop starts, then actually our client needs to start rendering stuff, and not before. Or the client could basically render, but it won't create a model from. So we can't create a game yet. So when we say client create, we could say, well, I mean, the client is created. Now render something else until we hear back. But for now, what we'll do is basically what we have to do. We have to wait for the first game model to come in. So basically, this is where when we create a client, we ask for game state events, right? And so that's what we need to subscribe to these guys, game state event. And so when we get the first one, that's when we actually create the game. And then we have a complete game model. I hope that makes sense. Because right now the server is basically just registering things, waiting for stuff, sending us arena already with like the minimum stuff that we already know. And then it's basically saying, okay, I'm still waiting for clients. Now I can send you a full game model once I have them. So that's what we actually need to wait for. So we need to do something like so instead of creating, so we still will create it from the arena. But in a way, we're already getting a model. So maybe we don't even have to create that here. So maybe we'll just remove this. And so what we'll do then is we say client dot gamestate event dot subscribe. Listen. Okay, so we listen for the first event, and the event has a game state. Game state. Oh, so we do need to create a game model already, in a way, but it has the players. So what we need to do, we need to create a model from the arena with a client ID, but we will not create the players yet. So we will make the players optional. Actually, they will not be even... Hold on, this is also used on the server, right? Oh no, I don't want a Google Assistant right now. Is this called anywhere else? I guess not. Yeah, because the game set doesn't have that. So that means we can then say void init players, and we give it a map in player model players. And then we just say this, so players equals players. So then, so we have our game model, we listen, we'll say that game model dot init players, and we give it event dot game state dot players. Now we have our complete game model at this point, and we can start our game. Obviously, like we may, as I mentioned before, we may want to show other things before, right? We may want to show like a waiting screen or something. So what's wrong here? Or we need to unpack them. Dot. Yeah, we basically need to unpack them, all of them. Players. It should be something like that on there. Pack player model, right? So, we need to do player model dot unpack. Oh, we don't have that yet. Okay, so, but we will take a break here at this point. I will check this code in as is. I will tag it, but we'll take a break here for like 5 minutes. I'll be back in 5 minutes, and we'll finish this. But I want to keep these episodes to 1 hour, even though we are kind of in the middle of something. I'm going to put a do here, fix this. It doesn't even compile yet. And maybe to make a compile, we'll do this for now. And it will compile, but it won't run right. So that's probably better than not compiling. So thanks for watching. I'll be back in 5 minutes.